All right, we are live. Thank you, Brig, for setting us up here. We are once again missing Cheech and Lance. This is another Spencer and I manning
We've got this.
The bridge here. And we have our buddy Tim. You may have seen Tim's work featured in such movies as... No, I'm just joking. But your art's featured everywhere. Tim Johnson, everybody. Yes. And so Tim hails from Arizona originally, did a stint in Utah. And now
long stint.
Quite a long stint.
Yeah, quite a long one. Yeah. And now is back in the land of sunshine.
That's true.
And eternal sand. And we're not talking Saudi Arabia. You live in Arizona.
There may be better trout fishing in Saudi Arabia. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
Oh, that's painful. But yeah, anyway, we've known Tim for a while. Spence and Tim go way back. You guys guided together.
That's right.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. I met Tim back when he was at Park Sportsman.
Blast from the past.
When was that?
That was a long time ago.
That was in the days of when I knew Curtis as Frito Fry, Utah on the Fly.
When was that? 2000?
Like 6?
Yeah, early 2000s.
Yeah,
early 2000s, maybe a little earlier.
Yeah. It's a long time.
It was a long time ago. Good times, though.
That was crazy. Yeah. So you've been around. The little tidbit, my wife worked at Park Sportsman in 96, 95, somewhere in there. Before your time, but...
Right on.
Yeah, so, which is no longer there. Well, it's there, but it's something else.
It's something different now.
Hot tub store or something. Anyway, we're here today. We wanted to bring Tim on because Tim is an interesting fella. He, we'll have Tim give kind of the intro, but you've probably seen a lot of Tim's artwork. Orvis, you're in, like I'd say, a lot of stuff there. We did the special run of Helios rods where you burned cork.
Yep, did an artist edition of hand burned grips on H3 rods. That was a cool series.
Yeah, those sold quite well. So, and you spent a summer doing those. Describe the machine that is used to create the burnings.
The machine that I use is this right hand.
Boom! It's a right hand.
Not any other one. It's this. No, just.
And you touched every one of them.
I did.
All right.
Well, I just use
no shortcut.
Use a wood burning pen, essentially, like you might have messed around with when you were a kid. And,
How long did that take you?
Like each
to
one.
do that? It took the summer, man. It was the worst summer of fishing of my life.
I remember that. We'd invite you to go fishing. You're like, I can't. I've got to work.
I think it hurt my eyesight. I had to watch out for carpal tunnel stuff. No, it wasn't that bad, but it was intense. The problem was doing the same thing over and over. The thing I love about doing the grips is each one is customized for someone, right? So I'm talking with them about what they want on it, something very specific to them. And so everything is a new work, and I love that. But this was 500 rods that were almost
the same
300
thing.
Brown trout, 200 bonefish, and so that was rough.
Yeah. So like on average, how much time each?
It depends on how well I get into the zone on those. But a grip in general will take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. Maybe even a little longer, depending if it's something crazy that I have to figure out. If I'm doing a person's face or something like that, it gets a little intense.
Well, and then color. I know I've noticed you've been doing some color.
Color is a whole different stage, right? If I want to add color to it.
That's money.
And then seal it up so it's ready to fish hard.
Yeah, so good. Very unique. I haven't seen too many. I've seen a couple of duplicate kind of things, but you're the OG on that, I would say, in the fly rod world. And they're great. Definitely. I have my bonefish, or it's a golden dorado. I was going to say a bonefish rod that was rendered useless by a 25-pound dorado in Argentina. Orvis was kind enough to not make me return it to get a new one. And then Tim took the butt section that was one that busted, put some pretty artwork on there. We'll toss an image of it on here, possibly, if Brig catches this. We'll make a note. But anyway, it's cool. So you do some great work. No question. What would you say, like early on in your life, how did you get into art? Where did that start to grow?
That began with the ADHDs. Yeah. So, I went on to become, a therapist and stuff like that, studied mental health, and I know much more about it now. But as a kid, I just couldn't sit there and listen, like church. can't sit there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so I'd just doodle.
Torture.
I'd doodle all the time. I'd be drawing in class, wherever. And if I was drawing, then I'd be absorbing everything that was going on and learning whatever's going on. But if not, it was rough. So
yeah, that's like something people don't understand with ADHD, because I've worked with some kids that have that. And I mean, I kind of understand conceptually what it's like, but the fact that you have to sort of engage your brain before your brain functions in a focus kind of setting, it doesn't seem intuitive, but certainly makes sense.
There's ways that it works best, right? If I'm using my hands and my eyes for something, then my auditory processing works really well for something else, right? It's not like I can listen to one thing and then be writing words. It doesn't work that way for me, right? But if I'm using my visual and spatial reasoning, to make artwork, then everything goes a lot easier. So, you get your 10,000 hours by doing it all of the time. And then you have a lot of, so I've always loved to draw. I've always been making artwork. Got a lot of positive reinforcement when I was a kid, because people said, "Oh, you're really good," and "Oh, Tim's the best artist in this, in the class in second grade or whatever." Yeah, and that makes you want to keep going. And I think what happens to a lot of kids, everybody does art when they're a kid. You guys did art when you were a kid. Everybody does art when you're a kid. And then at some point, and you probably don't remember when, a lot of people stop doing it. You stop doing it. Why do you stop doing it, right? And I think it's because you got like somebody says something stupid about your art, or you compare it to somebody else and you think it's not as good.
Well,
it's not my thing.
The big milestone event for me is in my childhood with art. I loved arts. I don't do it much anymore at all. Well, flies.
Yeah, definitely.
I also look at Google Sheets as art.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like you could do some really cool stuff with Google Sheets, I'd say. That's art.
It's a medium I haven't dabbled in yet, but I'm sure you're Rembrandt in Google Sheets.
I'm telling you what. Kind of a big deal. I was in first grade. I remember this like it was yesterday. I always thought I was I could color well. And so we're in first grade, Mrs. Baxter's class in Fruitland, Idaho. And I had drawn, it was something around Christmas. So I think it had Santa Claus or whatever. It was this time of year-ish. And I was all proud of my coloring job with my crayons. And this girl comes up to me and says, "You just can't stay in the lines, can you?" And just was ripping on my artwork. And that stuck to me like, I'm going to show her. And so I just went in deeper. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. And so when I was all through high school, grade school, junior high school, I was into drawing. I liked Marvel characters. I'd look at the comic book and draw some of those. Anyway, but then it kind of stopped there, because when I got into college, it was like I got math, and maybe some physics and more math for an engineer. And so the art was like, Anyway, but I guess you don't have to go to school to do art.
You don't. Yeah. I didn't go to school for art. I went to school.
And look how it turned out.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It is. It's all right.
It's all right.
That's the thing about art. Just keep doing it. You got to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's
and if you do,
key.
Eventually you're going to start finding what you like. You're going to start developing your process for your own. And that's the beautiful thing about art, is there's no right way to do art. Yeah. Every time something great comes along in art, everybody thinks it's ridiculous to start with.
Yeah.
And stupid. And then people say, okay, maybe it's okay. And then, okay, actually, this is kind of cool. The same thing was true of Timmy grips, by the way, right?
Yeah.
I burned a few grips. Spencer thought it was really cool, so I did one on his rods. And my guy
That's not what he told me.
Proved the concept. We don't need to talk about that now. We'll discuss that in the parking lot.
Curtis, you weren't supposed to say anything.
Yeah, but then people, you kind of reach a critical mass where people at least are open to the idea and realize that it has some really cool things going to it. So that process of art development is open to literally everyone, because as long as you're just trying to make something happen and you're continuing that, like trying to express yourself, it's gonna resonate with some people. But for some reason we get derailed, and that's okay. Not everybody has to continue doing artwork forever, but I think almost everybody could if they wanted to, if they chose to.
Yeah, some little corner of the art world has your name on it.
Do your thing. Yeah.
Well, and I guess in a way, fly tying is certainly an art form. Absolutely. I would say, that's kind of the thing that drew me in, I think, was because it's that combination of functionality and problem solving that my engineering brain likes, but also I like creativity. So I could put the two together when it came to fly tying. Plus, I think fly tying in terms of art, but it's a good release to your brain to unwind the knots that are in your brain.
Yeah.
And so, which I think art can do for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So you guys know this about me. Most people don't know this about me, but before I became a full-time artist, I was working as a recreation therapist using experiential modalities to help people. And art is one of those things.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about using something physical or a different mental process that isn't directly connected to what you might think is therapy, can have profound benefits to alleviating the anxiety, to kind of grounding yourself and getting some mentality back where you want it to be. So 100% agree with that. And your idea about flies as art, that's all it is to me.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, I take an organism, I'm not Curtis, I'm not Cheech, I don't have infinity. I'm more like Spencer. Spencer, we got a handful of flies.
On the same playing field here.
A handful of flies in a catalog. We get a little check in December, makes it worth it, right? But my flies aren't SOSs, unfortunately, because he sells the crap out of, the SOS is going crazy, of course, because it catches tons of. My flies are more of an art project for me.
Yeah.
And so I start with something that I think that's not well represented. I'd like something better for that. I look at the organism, I try to base it on that. And then look at all the materials that are available to me, all the techniques that I've learned, and then can I come up with something even different and build something from it? But because it's an art project for me, I put too much into it. And Cheech was like the first dude to make fun of me for this because we did a fly swap on Utah on the Fly, and it was chironomids. And I'm like, and I did this ridiculously complicated chironomid. And he's like, bro. And I was like, what? But yeah, I did a green drake nymph. You know that green drake nymph. That was way
Drake
too complicated.
I do remember that.
But it catches the crap out of fish if you can catch it, tie it small enough. And then my come at me cray, that thing catches the crap out of fish, but it's a complicated tie. It takes some
Is that
time.
one with foam in the
It's got
claws?
the foam claws, so it's swimming backwards and then it stops and you can't see it if you're listening, but I'm putting my hands up into the flying crane position right now because that's what they take, right?
Oh, they can see that.
And that
We're filming, so
they can. Okay.
No, but then you've got your candy crane.
No, the
that
candy
one
crane
I've caught a
slice.
lot of fish on.
Yeah,
that's a great fly.
My first time testing it out, and
Those
it's finished
taste so
form.
good, though.
They're delicious.
Yes.
It's on the beaverhead with you. We were in a blueing olive hatch, and I'm like, well, I'll use this as an attractor, and I'll put some different blueing nymphs and emerges behind it. And it didn't matter what I put back there. They were hitting it like 3-1 in the middle of this emergence.
It's a great fly.
It's awesome.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So art catches fish.
Absolutely.
That's the summary here. Use art to catch fish.
That's right.
Your catch rate will go up.
For sure.
So as you did different art forms over the years, what would you say is your favorite medium?
Well, drawing was the first thing I did, and it's what everybody does. Then I moved into watercolor. My mom just kind of, actually, while I was here at college at BYU, just down the road from the shop here, she bought me some watercolors for my birthday. She'd been a watercolor artist forever.
Cool.
Just for fun. And I started painting. So, of course, I started painting fish first. But having not taken art classes, I didn't know how everybody else does watercolor. So
You didn't know the rules.
I kind of made it up as I went. And they just don't look very watercolory, which was good for me because it kind of made my images different than everybody else who was painting watercolor.
Yeah.
And that was a benefit to me. So, of course, I'm painting fish. Fish is pretty much all I do. So that has been awesome. It's probably my favorite form of painting right now. And then burning. And the thing I love about the grips is that, like I just said, it's not if I do an oil painting, it's days and days and days, right?
Yeah.
To get through it. And I can do
And
grips.
also kind of a one and done.
It is.
Yeah.
But these grips, it's kind of a more rapid cycle thing. And I think that ties back into the ADHD brain,
Yeah.
that I like to move on to the next thing and have another project and be able to jump into something else
That's
and be creative
perfect.
with it.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's been
Well,
really
and
fun.
I've noticed it's not only like fly fishing art that you do on these grips. Like someone will do a custom grip, and like what are some of the ones that like non-fishing related that you've done?
So all kinds of stuff. Like I said, I've done people. The hardest ones are memorial rods, right? It'll be grandpa's rod, and he wants grandpa's face on grandpa's rod. So it's a combination of problems because the hardest thing I think in art to do is a human face, because there are locations of our brain that are designed specifically to be able to identify an individual person at a glance by the face.
Yeah.
And it's different than anything else that you look at in the world
Way
in terms
different,
of the way your brain interprets it. So that's a challenge in our work because I can't make it just look like a person. If I wanted to just make it look like a golden retriever, you'd be like, that's a perfect golden retriever.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to do Spencer and it's a little off, it's probably perfect because Spencer's a little off. No, but
He's special.
But if it's not exactly like him, you're like, oh, that looks like a person, doesn't look like him.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first problem is I've got to make it look like this actual person. Second problem is there's no eraser, right?
Yeah.
I'm burning into your cork.
Yeah.
It's done. Right. So I got to do it right.
Undo.
And the third problem is if I don't get it just right, even if I decided, hey, my bad, let me get you a new rod. I can't. That's grandpa's vintage rod that is an heirloom. So that's rough.
That's pretty stressful.
And then so
what would you do? Just go down to the store and try to find one, kind of like that.
like rough it
that
up,
Seinfeld episode where George loses the $10,000 hat or something, and they replace it with one that's made from rodents, thinking nobody would know. Hey, this is Grandpa's rod. No, it's
that's not Grandpa's rod.
It really is.
No, yeah. So people are rough, but I love the challenge too. But yeah, I've done everything. I mean, bush planes for people who are going to Alaska. Somebody's old truck, from the 1950s that he wanted to have on there. Maybe the freakiest one I've ever done. Yeah, we can edit this if we have to.
No, just go ahead.
It's for there's a great rod builder in Switzerland named Renato Vitalini, and he sends me requests. He's building these rods, and that's another thing I do. I work with a lot of great rod builders.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
They'll offer this as an upgrade to their customers, so they'll send me the grip. I'll do the artwork and send it back to them. This was a request from him, and what he wanted was the length of the grip to be a woman's body, with a zipper going through the middle, and the zipper parting, showing cleavage. He used a different word that's English, but not an English word that I use. And he said, but I don't want them to just be those. I want it to have brown trout skin pattern on the bosoms. And we're just thinking, this is what your client asked for? He said, yeah. And I said, cool. But I'm never checking that dude's browser history. This got weird.
Your wife walks in, hey, Tim,
what's going on? What are you doing?
Well, did you do it?
I did it. Yeah. I gave the customer what he wanted. There was nothing, overly revealing.
Yeah.
It just got weird.
It was just
that's okay.
A little different.
Because that's what a Timmy grip is about, Spencer. It's not about what I want. It's about your rod. We're making this for you. So you want some piscatorian cleavage? That's what you get. You get that. So we've done all kinds of stuff.
Well, okay, I know people are going to ask.
That's good.
How if they want a grip from you, what do they do?
Just hit me up, man. You can just email me directly. You can go on my website, timjohnsongallery.com, and there's certificates you can buy on there. You can buy a certificate, fill it out in your name, basically, and that's ordering the rod, the work from me. Or you can fill it out online in somebody else's name. If I wanted to get one for Spencer,
and then what's the process?
Yeah, so you check that out. If it's for somebody else, I'll actually mail the certificate to them, or you select the address you want it sent to. But if it's for you, then you can still check out online, but just email me and say, hey, I'm sending you my rod. I just need the butt section. So people just stick the butt section in a shipping tube with some padding, send it my way. And then, it's as simple as that. I'm really, really good at getting rods done quickly and sent back to people because I know that they want to fish them. If you want to commission a painting from me, it's going to be months until it's done. But the rods, I get them back quick. Yeah. So it's a really simple process. Check out the website or email me, timjohnsongallery@gmail.com. And either way, we'll get to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say, like for me with the Dorado rod that broke, like that's a memory because you can watch the video on our YouTube channel about the Dorado. It was a really big Dorado in a place we didn't expect it. I still would have used the same rod, but so I'm fighting it. Little did we know so Cheech goes to the front of the boat and grabs a net that happened to be broken, although we didn't realize the extent that it was broken, and the handle was essentially separated from the net hoop. And so Cheech goes in there to net this. First, let me back up. I'm fighting it like a normal person. And Sean Combs from Orbis validated this with the video footage to say I didn't grab the graphite. I didn't do anything funky. It just broke. Okay. So it breaks.
Which is great. You just said validated by Sean Combs, who's the nuclear physicist, engineer, rod designer at Orbis. So I don't know if you can get a more authoritative source.
That's right.
He just totally tried to back himself up there.
Although he did go into the conversation of rod angles and pressure.
Where the inflection point will be.
Yeah. Which was kind of revealing. So it gives me a little bit better leg up when I go fight those again. But so it just snaps right after one of the jumps. And then in the back, you can hear Lucas, our guide, handline. And so we're like, okay. So I just grabbed the line and I'm fighting this 20-pound Dorado with my bare hands.
Old man in the sea style, right?
Come over here.
Channeling your Hemingway.
Yeah. Get him in there. So Cheech jumps up and he grabs the net. And as he's going to net it, we see on the video later, the handle just falls into the marsh. Gone forever. You don't want to put your hand in there and get bit by some piranha or anything. Anyway, so now he's dealing with two pieces of the hoop, and so he hand nets this from his belly.
Yes.
And so that's why, like, for us, that was a good keepsake. And it was, yes. And the work is there freaking insane. So, so that right there is on display now. I'm going to shadow box it, and that will forever be the best memento from our trip. But anyway, it's phenomenal stuff. So I think people are curious, like, okay, so you're a therapist and you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's kind of like when Cheech and I switched from our normal jobs to doing this, you have that in mind, right? You want to, take a side hustle and make it a legit business, or more legit. What would you say, where was the kind of the inflection point for you to fish or cut bait kind of thing?
Yeah, well, it was a really kind of gradual and smooth transition. I mean, I got into therapy from fly fishing, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, fishing has kind of driven
a lot of your stuff.
Everything in my life, basically, professionally. So I was at BYU. I was helping to teach the fly fishing class, which you can take for credit. You can repeat it for credit. So I have like 12 credit hours of A in fly fishing. Anyway.
Wow.
Pump up that GPA. So, so as I was doing that, I was also volunteering at the Veterans Hospital in Salt Lake.
Cool.
And I was teaching fly tying.
And we went up there a few times. That's a cool outfit. Yeah.
So teaching fly tying to those guys in the PTSD unit. And then I eventually started taking them fishing. And we did trips out to, Spencer, you remember, to Falcons Ledge and Six Lakes. I brought some veterans out. We do a camp out. And
that's rad.
And when I do these trips, they'd tell me how awesome it is and how great it is for, helping their symptoms and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I get emails and I get letters from wives and family members saying things like, well, Jim sleeps through the night for several nights after he gets back. Like these kinds of like real anecdotal, but seem to be pretty legitimate evaluations of actual symptom treatment.
Sure.
So there's something here. So I went back to the professor who's in charge of the recreation management youth leadership kind of program there at BYU. And he was the one who was in charge of the fly fishing program, Raymond Zabriskie, Dr. Zabriskie. And I was like, Dr. Zabriskie, fly fishing is incredibly therapeutic. Like somebody should be looking into this. There should be research about how we can use these activities as a therapeutic treatment for people. And he's like, that's what I do, bro. And I was like, what do you mean? And so he said, this is what he does. He researches, recreation, how it can be used in all different sorts of beneficial ways, including in mental health, but not limited to. And so, so that became, that's what I'm going to do then. So I learned more about that. I graduated in it, started working again with veterans, did my internship to become a therapist at the Veterans Hospital in Phoenix, and then got hired back up here in Utah. So came back up here and started working at a treatment center for kids on the autism spectrum. So very high functioning autistic kids, and using all kinds of recreational modalities for them. But fly fishing being my first love, I almost had to try to avoid it a little bit to not overdo it.
Okay.
Guys, right?
If it were my choice, you do this every day.
Well, I mean, you would, for a reward for these kids, you say, it would be fly fishing, or
sometimes for some, depending on who it was. And you met several of them, Spencer, we'd come fishing at the lodge or somewhere like that. And I loved that job. I felt like I was really great at it. Really loved working with those kids, and some of them were there for a year and a half. So I developed great relationships with them, with their families, really rewarding. And at the same time, of course, I'm painting, I'm drawing, I'm selling prints, and it just kind of kept increasing. So I was working as a therapist. I was working as an adjunct professor at BYU. I was on the advisory board for the Marriott School there also, and guiding with Spencer, and all of these things were great. And then the artwork surpassed it in terms of income with very kind of minimal effort, right?
Yeah.
And that's when it was just started. I had this conversation with my wife. I'm like, the art it made more money this year than all of these other things. Like maybe the side hustle needs to become the primary hustle. And she was like, yeah.
And she's like, well, as long as you get rid of your OnlyFans account, that's probably okay.
Baby, some things I do for my own personal gratification. So gotta have it.
I made that up.
No one should probably say that officially. And at the same time, my mom had been getting to where she's having memory problems and anxiety problems. And I've been working on helping people with anxiety for a decade. So that was when we looked like it was time to, after 15 years of living it up in the Wasatch, to come back down to Arizona, help take care of mom, and I can do art from anywhere. So set up the studio there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we like I said, we've known Tim for a long time, but your work is top notch, I think blows people away, especially people who've never seen a grip. When I show, that's why I have that one on the desk. So sales reps will come in, or people will come in and they'll look at that and go, what the, give them the story behind it. And then they just look at that and it just, blows their mind. But so, I mean, that's such a cool thing when, when I left, so I was engineer for a few years, and then I worked in software and business consulting for a lot of years. So for me, at least, changing from that world to the fly fishing world was like, I didn't particularly like or love. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but you really did it was very rewarding to you. And so that must have been a bit of a tough choice. Yes.
Yeah, it was. And I have to stay connected to it in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And I helped with some development of some nonprofits that and things like that. And so I stay connected with those. It'll never be something that I fully put down. But yeah, the passion was always fly fishing.
Yeah.
And art. It was, I didn't even recognize it as a passion because it's just what I did all the time.
Sure.
So that was the natural life progression, probably was inevitably leading to this, right?
Yeah.
There were things that would have stopped me from doing that and did for a while. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it didn't feel like I had to shift away from something. It felt like I just kind of went back to the path that I'd been on since I was 6 years old.
Yeah. So. Well, and that brings up another point. So you've made it, I would say, in terms of doing your thing in art and living, and that's good. Everybody needs money, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say, and maybe you kind of give me your thought on this, but I've seen a lot of artists pop up on socials over years, and most, I don't know, it depends on how you're counting, but I'd say a lot of them fizz out.
Yeah.
Like either it's not rewarding enough, or it's not worth the time, or they don't have the time to dedicate because they got a fish or cut bait kind of a thing,
Yeah.
If you had to say, kind of boil it all away at a high level, what, besides talent, which you have it in spades, but maybe not everybody has the talent, but at a high level, what is the key, the big thing? What's that thing that makes people successful in art specifically, but as an income stream that is reliable?
See, I feel like it's a combination of questions, right? Because I think the things that make you successful in art, or that make you a good artist, don't necessarily make you successful in business.
Yeah.
And you've got to find a way to make both of those things work.
Yeah, well, that's
the hard thing, right? And so I'd say the thing that makes it work is finding out how to combine these two things. There's so many great artists that will never be able to make a business out of it because they don't understand business.
Yeah.
And so I honestly, that's what I would say is the difference between somebody who becomes a successful professional artist and somebody who's just a great artist. I don't mean to say just a great artist. If I had to choose between being one of those, I probably would choose being a great artist rather than being a financially successful artist, because I feel like that's just so important to my life. And I think for most people who identify themselves as an artist primarily say, I wouldn't be able to just kind of let go of what I love creating for financial reasons.
Yeah.
But if you can do both of those, the reason you're going to be able to do both of those is because you do enough of the thing that isn't your primary love to be able to make your primary love flourish. So you got to understand business enough. You've got to understand what the steps are to making this financially viable for me. And you have to have the discipline to actually take those steps.
Discipline.
Yeah. And that's the thing. When you're an ADHD kid and an artist, well, I've been disciplined in something. You got to figure it out. You got to nail it down. And the carrot has to be, okay, this can be my profession. If you like that enough, then you can go get it. When I first came to BYU, my dad had this law that every one of his kids had to take Accounting 200 and Econ 110 and these business classes. And the theory was you can become whatever you want in life. But when you reach the apex of whatever you're doing, it's only the apex, and you can't go beyond it if you're limited by something. And what you're going to be limited by is your ability to make your own business out of it. Mm-hmm. He was a physician. He was a great doctor.
Yeah.
But what really put him over the top was he created his own. He was a nephrologist. For you that don't know, it's kidneys and dialysis. And he created a new system kind of for dialysis service to patients outside of hospitals, and then built dialysis units, and then built a corporation that was eventually publicly traded. Like, it became very big.
So cool. Yeah.
And he was able to do that because not only was he a great doctor, but he had enough understanding of business and vision that he could move past it. Now, am I doing that? No, this is a total microcosm of that, but the principle is the same. You're going to reach to where your talent will take you. And then if you actually want to be able to be financially successful and viable beyond that, you do have to make yourself a businessman also. And if you can't do that, then you really probably aren't going to be able to make, no matter how talented you are, unless there's another person who comes in and chooses to be that for you. And this happens, the gallery owners or managers or agents in other industries will see a great talent and they'll take a huge portion of the income from that talent because you don't have the resources to do it on your own. And if that works for you, great. But for most of us, you're going to have to do that on your own.
Yeah. That's worth the price of this podcast. So whatever you guys are paying, double it. Double
it. You can pay me on my OnlyFans.
So Tim, there's a lot of artists out there, and especially in the fly fishing. Are there any artists that you looked up to or that you got a hold of, needed some information or advice?
That's a good point.
That would have been a really good idea. I mean, there's a lot of artists that I really like and I appreciate their work. Yeah. And there are some that I've talked to about it. Derek Young came to Orvis Guide Rendezvous a couple times. And so I'd go over and chat with him, and he had some good advice about, some of it was actually technical stuff. I had done very few oil paintings because I'm mostly a watercolor guy. So I got to break into oils. And he said, and he talked to me about gessoing canvases and stuff like that. So some actual technical advice from him. In terms of the things that we've been talking about, business advice for artists, I haven't really talked to a lot about that, but I should. But there's a lot that I really appreciate just purely from their work standpoint that are making really good art. The thing about fly fishing, Spencer and I have a mutual friend, Jake Ricks, who's a really smart guy, a guide that we've fished with and continue to fish with just as buddies after we've not been guiding together as much. And he said that as he was talking to other people about fly fishing and trying to make a profession in the industry, so the thing about fly fishing is I've never seen so many smart people chasing so few dollars. Right. And that's kind of how fly fishing is.
That is so true.
Isn't it true? And that's because when you have a passion, you want to get into that industry.
Yeah.
And everybody everybody in this room, and most of the guys that we know have tried to get into fly fishing professionally in some way or another. Yeah. And most of them aren't very successful at it because it's hard, because there's so many people who want to do it. When you have passion, you would love to make that your profession. Yeah. Right. And so you have, we're on a fly fishing primarily podcast, so I can say this even though it sounds prejudicial. I think fly fishermen are smarter than most people. I don't know. That's a douchey thing to say, but I think there are a lot of smart people in fly fishing and passionate
people. Don't worry,
people.
we don't let any non-fly fishers.
Oh, good. We're pretty. And if you are listening, what are you doing? Convert or get out. So, but yeah, they're very smart people, very passionate people. And a lot of them have good resources to start something like that if they want to. Yeah. And so it is a segment that is difficult, right? You do have to have a lot of skill and a lot of talent. You got to bring something that other people aren't bringing. So it's not an easy industry. Yeah. But I've seen a lot of people succeed. You guys are killing it. Spencer and Tim Jenkins, and I got in a little bit with tacky fly fishing, which was an awesome project. I've got a tacky shirt.
Oh, look at that. Repping the brand.
Designed by Tim Johnson.
Oh, man.
And this double whammy. It looks like Kermit the Frog.
Those are sunglasses.
That's this hat with these sunglasses tilted at the same time.
That is good. Anyway. It's funny because Spence and I did a podcast a couple weeks ago on breaking into the industry business-wise, and I love the comment that for the number of intelligent people that are chasing small dollar amounts for like relatively big effort. Yeah, I think that's like a disease. It's understandable because of the passion part of it.
Right.
But as we mentioned that podcast, we get people that will talk to us about ideas and products and what have you, and they're not all products. It could be like, here's a travel idea that I have, or a film idea that I have, or a guide, sort of experience that they have. Beyond discipline, which is, I think, the thing that deep sixes a lot of these, because they're, in general, they may have a good idea and it could be scalable, but they just fizzle out. Yeah, it's too much work. Not worth it. I'll go back to my whatever job. But I think the other piece, and I've seen this happen more than anything else, is that if they are consistent, what they're trying to sell or do is great. You'll make some money, but for the effort, you probably just as well going and getting a regular job. Mm-hmm. I mean, because you're trying to do something like very often we'll get pitched on onesie twosie products. Like that is a great product. Oh, good. Will you buy it from me? No, What? Why not? Because you're just one guy, and this is a small dollar amount. And so I kind of am up here and I can kind of see what's going to happen. And is that you're really super stoked about this right now, and you're going to go all in and you're going to invest some money and a ton of time. And at the end, you're getting $200 out of it. Well, that's going to be cool the first few times that happens. But 6 months from now, you're going to say, meh, it's not worth it. And then you're gone. And so then we have a product that we can't sell because we can't get it. Anyway, but I think that's the big thing, is that it makes people chase a lot of dollars they shouldn't.
Right.
Or maybe in a way they shouldn't. But anyway, that's a great point.
Yeah, the feeling and the emotion makes you want to do it. But if you don't have the ability to evaluate and say, how is this really going to work out?
Yeah.
And are those choices worth it? And will that support me the way that I want to? And plus my kids and et
right.
cetera, so there are hard decisions to make, and you need to make those decisions at the beginning. Right.
Yeah. Big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people dive into these things before really thinking, is my baby ugly? If so, I'm getting out of these beauty contests.
Don't ask mom.
Yeah.
She can't tell any better than you can.
Yeah.
And that's true though, because you'll ask your very close buddies, and some of them love you and love your product and don't see it with clear eyes, just like you don't.
Yeah.
Right. You got to bring in somebody else and be like, what do you think? Get some honest answers.
Yeah, absolutely. As you've been doing art, guiding, all that, I mean, you have to have some cool experiences, or what are some memorable things? They could be funny. They could be life-changing.
I'll tell you.
I'm going to put you on a spot.
Let me tell you. I'm going to tell you. You sent me an Instagram reel.
This was my
first day guiding at Falcons Ledge.
Well, let me back
Spencer's
up.
my boss.
Tim is a great guide. How long did you guide for us?
I don't know.
10 years?
Yeah, a long time.
But he was one of our top guides, and people loved him. Return clients would come back requesting Tim, and that's a big deal in the guiding industry. You're doing a good job if people are requesting you.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So yeah. I'm gonna do bookends here. I'm gonna talk about my first guide and one of my last guide trips in Utah. Most recent, I should say. I'm not going to close the book on that. So my first day out of Falcons Ledge, I'm out there. Spencer's the head guide. He's the boss. I'm with Grant Bench, mutual friend of ours. He was early guide at Falcons Ledge as well. He may have been there for a year already by the time I got there. And it was the reason I got there was because it was a big corporate, bunch of anglers out, and they needed a couple extra guys. Spencer knew me, calls me up, says, "Yeah, come fish, Tim, come guide." Foreshadowing, a Freudian slip right there. Come guide. And so we each take 2 clients and we're fishing. And I feel like this is a tryout, right? I feel like, this is my guide tryouts. My guy's got to kill it. Okay, we got to kill it. And we stayed on the still waters there at Falcons Ledge, and I worked so hard, got these guys both into fish over 20 inches. They're stoked. I'm stoked because they're stoked. And at lunch, everybody quits fishing. Everybody decides, okay, we're done, except for my 2 guys. Why? Because they just had a hell of an experience catching giant fish with Tim Johnson. That's why, Spencer. So my 2 guys are staying behind, and they're going to keep fishing. So for the afternoon, almost all the other guides are done. And so Grant, my buddy, says, "Hey, Tim, you take one of them, I'll take the other. We'll guide together for the rest of the day." I'm like, that's awesome. And then these guys are going to get one-on-one attention. Fabulous. So we, get them fishing. We go up to Nighthawk, which is one of the lakes at Falcons Ledge, and they start catching fish. And we realize these guys are counting fish and having a competition with each other. So who's going to catch them? And that's fine. I'm going to make my guy win, right? So I rig up a second rod ready to go, so he can fish a streamer and a chironomid under an indicator, switch back and forth. And he's like, "Oh, Tim, I don't want to fish your rod." I'm like, "Oh, no, it's totally fine. Please fish my rod." And he's like, no. And I'm like, "I want you to win." And he's like, "No, I only want to catch fish on my rod." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine then." So I just have him keep fishing his rod, and I set the other one against a bush and stuff. He's like, "But you fish that rod." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to fish. I'm not going to fish that rod." He's like, "No, Tim, fish it. And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to."
Because what happens when a guide picks up a rod.
More foreshadowing. So Grant gets convinced by his guy, though. So now Grant's fishing with the other guy, and every fish that Grant catches, this guy starts counting toward his total. And so now my guy looks back at me and he's like,
"Game on.
I want to win. That guide is helping his client win. You're not helping me win." And I'm just like, "Oh crap." And now I'm in this position of ultimately I have to I know I can't fish with the client. You can't fish with the client.
Number 1 rule, never fish with the client.
But I felt like the number 1 rule was make the client happy. And so I'm like, so I throw in first cast, hook like a 26-inch fish. And I know it's huge. So I'm just like, so like I fight it in super hard and then like get it in the net, unhook, like send it away as fast, like, no, nothing to see here, you know? And then I'm like all embarrassed. So I go over to the other side of the pond with the inlet and I just start flipping over there because I know there's a bunch of tiny little brook trout stacked up. So I just catch 20 tiny little brook trout, you know, just to pad his numbers, but no fear of catching a giant fish again, right? Oh, and I'm just like, oh no, that shouldn't have happened, you know? And they go in and they're settling up in the pro shop with Spencer. And as I'm like walking into the shop, I hear Spencer be like, so how was the day? And my guy says, oh, it was great. Of course, Tim caught the biggest fish. I'm just like, Spencer looks over, makes eye contact, and I'm just like, it was bad. And he had to give me the talking to. Tim, can I talk to you for
Step in my office.
Tim, you have some splaining to do.
You never fish with a client, Tim. And he gave me like some ideas about how to avoid fishing.
Did your
with a client
win the
he
competition?
Won.
Okay.
Yes, he won.
All right.
He tipped very well, by the way. He was a pleased client, but I learned a valuable lesson. And Spencer let me know. He's like, I don't know. Some of it's skill, some of it's karma. But if you ever fish with a client, you are going to catch the biggest fish, and it's not going to make them happy. So
I would say if you want to catch the biggest or the most fish, or you want to guarantee yourself of catching a fish, take somebody, call them a client. They'll call you the guide. As soon as you pick up that rod, you are guaranteed by karma and universal laws of physics that you will catch a fish, and it will be big and memorable.
That's true.
So there you go, guys. That's the secret.
It's a good system. That's an excellent system. So one of the last guide trips, I actually came back up to Utah for that. And I have some long-term clients who want to fly, like pay exorbitant fees to fly me up here to fish with them, which is, I love them for that. That's great. It's not cost effective. There's a lot of other good guides up here. I hope they're not watching this, but
they know.
we can edit this out if we need to. But I was fishing with none other than Donald Trump Jr. when his father was president, right? And so we checked security stuff, figuring it out, et cetera, et cetera. And the other guides I'm with were like, listen, guys, I don't care what your persuasions are. There is zero political talk today.
It's fishing.
No for, no against. Like, if you get engaged in it, we're going to get stuck at some point. You're going to say something stupid. We're just fishing, right? So, okay, cool, right? So I've got Donald Trump Jr., DJ TJ, as I call him, and his girlfriend Kim Guilfoyle's there as well. Somebody takes Donald fishing with him, and Donald, he's a great fisherman. He needs no help. He needs some fly recommendations, and he's good to go. We were on the Weber. It was really slow though. It was about this time of year actually. They just cooled off, and it was fish kind of shut down. He caught a few brown trout, kind of middling brown trout, nothing too big. And Kim she hadn't fished, right, a lot. And so it was a lot harder. So I'm trying to get her into a fish. We're working really hard. And she hooks this big whitefish. And I'm an expert at getting my clients pumped when they need to be pumped. And sometimes they don't know when they need to be pumped. And that's even better, right? Because she lands this whitefish. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is the Rocky Mountain white. This is the only native fish anybody has caught today. And it's like 6 inches bigger than any fish Donald has caught. You're killing it, Kim. You are destroying. And so she's like, yeah, Donald, I got the big fish. I got the big fish of the day. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Like, we're getting all pumped. And Donald's over on the other side. He's like, no. He's like, that's a whitefish. He's like, whiteys don't count. Brown trout count. Whiteys don't count. And I just look at him and I say, Don, of all the people in America, you've got to be the last one that I would expect to tell me that we got to push down the whitey to raise up the brown trout. That does not sound. That doesn't sound. That's the only one. That's the only comment. No more. That was pretty funny. Kim thought it was pretty funny. I don't know if Don thought it was pretty. I think deep down, I think he felt like it was pretty funny. That was a pretty good one. It was right there, though. You know, I had to take it. So
that's funny.
Anyway.
Well, we are making good time with our fancy new timer. All the people at YouTube land can't see that. Obviously, we're describing it if you're listening only, but we have a big timer on.
They get their own timer in the bottom corner.
We have a flat screen on the wall, and it's just a timer.
Yeah, it's like a 40-inch television we use for other stuff. Now it's basically a timer, so that we can see.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So
this whole environment is fancy. You guys can see what you can see back here, but even back there, I'm seeing like $40,000 of lenses on the wall.
That's about right.
It's a nice environment. Is that a good thumb? That's a good rule of thumb or an estimation? Yeah, this is.
Oh,
yeah. You guys have the operation. And we've known this forever. Like, when you guys started your thing, I was like, it's going to be, and it has. It's become, Disneyland of fly tires.
That's what we try. That's what we aim for.
Primo.
Yeah, well,
Primo.
thanks.
It's like the Tim Johnson artwork of fly shops. That's what I like to call it. Back
Whoa.
up. I'm just
That's going to be our current byline. Welcome to Fly Fish Food. Tim Johnson. Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, thanks, Tim. We'll probably have you back sometime.
Sweet.
Once you've earned it.
No, I'll work so hard. What do I got to do? Tell me how many carp I have to catch. I'll get it done, and then I'll fly back up.
Lots of
Come
carp.
on down, guys. We
I
got
fish with- I fish with-
carp
yeah.
fishing down
I've
there.
fished with you before in Arizona for carp and what else would we catch? Koi
Yeah.
and some bass. That was fun.
We went to the 2 Phoenix area fly fishing clubs a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they kept talking about the Rocky Point
Oh, yeah.
fishery
Yeah.
in Mexico, but I guess it's a thing and not that far.
Totally. It's like
You
a
know?
4-hour drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be down with that.
Yeah, Arizona guys. I mean, we've been going down there for spring break forever.
Yeah.
And very few people know how good it is in terms of fly fishing. Also, you got the estuaries, and when the tide
Yeah.
comes in, tide moves out. You got the moving water, fish eating. That can be awesome.
Yeah.
And I poo-pooed the trout fishing down there, and I didn't mean to do that. I regret it because there is good trout fishing down
Yeah,
in
there
Arizona
is.
too, especially when you're hunting like Apache Gila trout,
Yeah.
which you just can't do anywhere. And now they're reestablishing stream-born and native populations of wild Gilas in Arizona and
nice.
Apaches, and it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
really, really cool to be able to do that.
We better keep that
it's
on
not
the
It's
DL.
not a bunch of 20-inch fish in rivers down there. Like
That's
it
all
is up
right.
here,
Let's
but
go down and fish.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
come on
we will.
down. We'll catch some Gilas.
I've never
we'll
caught
tickle
one.
the carp.
Me neither.
You've never caught a Gila, yeah? Well, they're pretty.
Yeah.
They're pretty, and that's how I grew up, guys. I was a little kid, Mesa, Arizona.
You made it work.
Super addicted to fishing. Could only fish wherever I could ride my yellow Schwinn cruiser. So
good.
making deals with golf course people and ninja fishing where I wasn't allowed to, and hitting the canals, man. So
Well, that's good,
that's
Tim. We
awesome.
wish you the best. We know because you're a hard worker and you're smart and you've got a little talent. Yeah,
we
a
try.
little bit.
We try.
Anyway, website again, Tim Johnson Gallery.
TimJohnsonGallery.com, and yeah, follow me on
On the
Instagram,
socials,
Tim
yeah.
Johnson Gallery, and yeah, get yourself. The next step probably will be getting Timmy Grip certificates and stuff available in fly shops as well. So you can walk in, see an example at a place like
Yeah.
Fly Fish Food, and see one on the wall and be like, "Oh, that looks sexy."
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to probably put some signs up, but we have at least discussed with some customers and maybe sent a couple your way. But any fly rod that you buy from us is eligible
Absolutely.
for a Timmy Grip special.
And if you got getting a custom rod built by somebody, and
Oh,
you're
even
like,
better.
"Hey, man.
Yeah.
If you hit up Tim, we can get some extra artwork on that.
There you
You can
go.
always just
So
send
cool.
me the butt section of your rod, no matter how old. I'll clean it up, make it beautiful.
Great Christmas
Yeah.
present.
On it.
Oh yeah, we'll release this before Christmas, just in time.
And there are, of course, prints and stuff available. I still do 2-dimensional artwork, even though it doesn't feel like it somewhere. They're still going on. Yeah, get a certificate for somebody else. That's a great gift.
Yeah,
In their
awesome.
name.
Okay, well, that is it. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, brother.
And Spence,
Yeah,
and
thanks,
we'll
Tim.
catch you guys on the flip side.